Success is not luck, grit is not genetic, both are built, and they are built inside your nervous system. Right now, at this very moment, your brain is adapting to what you demand from it. Every decision, every habit, every moment of distraction or discipline, it's shaping the architecture of your mind. Your brain is not a stone, it is fire. It is not fixed, but forged, moment by moment, through the furnace of your focus. Neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to change, is not passive and it is not given. It is earned. It does not activate when you're scrolling, coasting, or merely absorbing information. It comes alive when you decide to press forward, when everything in you screams to stop. Focused attention is the spark. Deep effort is the hammer, and together they sculpt the mind into something sharper, stronger, and unshakable. When you sit in comfort and expect transformation, you deny the law written into the biology of your being. Nothing changes without pressure. The neural circuits responsible for learning, growth, and transformation don't wake up for routine. They respond to intensity. When your attention pierces through distraction like a blade, when you strain against resistance with deliberate effort, your brain begins to rewire itself. Synapses fire, connections strengthen, and a new architecture is born, not in theory, but in the living flesh of your mind. And here is the sacred truth: you are not the prisoner of your past wiring, you are the sculptor of your future mind. Every distraction resisted, every deep breath taken in the presence of stress, every moment you choose discipline over dopamine, these are the bricks and mortar of a new brain. This is the narrow path, the path of deliberate effort and focused will, and it is through that path that grit is built, not wished for. Because the neural circuits of perseverance are forged when you stay locked into a hard task with full attention. You override the primitive urges, you silence the noise, and with every second of effort, you become something greater than the sum of your neurons. The world wants to seduce your attention, to fracture your focus, to pull you into shallow waters. But you are called to something deeper. You are called to the kind of focus that hurts, that demands your full presence, that calls every part of your nervous system into alignment. That is where neuroplasticity is set ablaze. That is where transformation begins, not in a moment of comfort, but in the crucible of concentrated struggle. It is in those sacred seconds where you resist distraction, where you press in with everything you have, where your brain changes, your identity reshapes, and your spirit begins to rise from dust of who you were into the image of who you are becoming. Dopamine is not pleasure, it is pursuit. It is not the reward, it is the force that drives you toward it, and until you understand that, you will be a slave to it. The world has hijacked this molecule, turned it into a tool of distraction, addiction, and instant gratification. But in its true form, dopamine is sacred. It is the fuel of creation, discipline, and divine resilience. When you attach dopamine to the outcome only of the praise, the win, the finish line, you weaken your own capacity to endure. You build a brain that only acts when applause is guaranteed, but when you learn to link dopamine to the process, to the struggle itself, to the pain of the push, you become unstoppable. Your brain is wired to release dopamine in response to novelty, to reward, to progress. But here's the truth hidden in the biology. The system is flexible. It adapts and you can train it. When you intentionally tell your brain, this grind matters, this repetition is sacred, this effort is the victory, you rewire the entire motivational circuitry. You flip the switch from short-term desire to long-term endurance. And something ancient awakens in you, a deeper drive, one not rooted in vanity or validation, but in the sheer force of purpose. The men and women who shape empires, who bend reality, who rise in silence and lead with thunder, they are not always the most talented. They are the ones who have mastered this neurochemical truth. Love the process, and the process will love you back. This is not metaphysical fluff. It is molecular law. The striatum, the midbrain, the frontal cortex, they light up not only when the goal is reached, but when the brain believes progress is being made. So feed it with meaning, show it that the reps matter, tell it that the discipline is reward, and it will begin to crave the climb. The world will mock the effort, it will seduce you with ease, but your calling is not comfort, it is conquest of the inner terrain. And that begins when you look at the struggle and say, "This is where I rise." That begins when your dopamine is no longer given away to every ping, scroll, or shallow pleasure, but reclaimed, redirected, and rewired to feed your highest aim. Not tomorrow, now, cold, strain, stillness in the face of discomfort. These are not punishments, they are portals. They are the sacred gatekeepers to grit. Your nervous system is designed not for comfort, but for adaptation. And the way you signal your brain to grow, to strengthen, to build resilience, is not through softness, but through strategic stress. The science is clear. When you deliberately step into controlled discomfort, the circuits responsible for fear, hesitation, and fatigue begin to shift. You don't just tolerate pressure, you are rewired to thrive in it. Cold exposure, breath, holding, deliberate endurance. These are ancient practices now confirmed by modern neuroscience. When the body shivers and the breath shortens, when everything in your flesh wants to escape, and yet you stay, something powerful ignites. The prefrontal cortex asserts its command over the limbic brain. The stress response is recalibrated. Cortisol levels drop. Adrenaline is refined into focus. You are teaching your nervous system to become unshakable, not by avoiding chaos, but by meeting it with calm. This is not about masochism. It's about mastery. The ability to enter adversity with intention rewires your brain at the molecular level. You expand your capacity to suffer without breaking, to feel without fleeing. Neurochemicals like norpine, freen surge, sharpening your perception. Dopamine begins to rise not from comfort, but from conquest, from the simple act of doing what's hard, without applause, without escape. And in that rewiring, you become forged. The world wants you to believe resilience is something you either have or don't. But the truth written into your biology is far more liberating. Resilience is earned, grit is trained. And the training ground is discomfort. You don't become stronger by reading about pressure. You become stronger by entering it, fully awake, fully aware, and fully surrendered to the process. Each time you do, you build a new baseline for what your mind and body can handle. You turn fear into data. You turn pain into a signal. You stop seeing resistance as a threat and begin seeing it as an invitation. The path to greatness does not bypass suffering. It requires it. And those who are willing to meet it on their own terms with breath, stillness, and strategy are the ones who will rise while the rest retreat. The brain does not become disciplined in theory, it becomes disciplined under fire. So if you seek mental strength, emotional control, and unbreakable focus, don't run from stress, step into it. Train your system in the silence, in the cold, in the controlled storm, until the storms outside can no longer shake the foundation within. Impulse is the enemy of mastery. It is the voice that says stop when you must move. It is the instinct that reaches for ease when effort is required. And yet, deep within the brain lies a sacred region, the prefrontal cortex endowed with the power to override the primitive pull of the moment. But it is not automatic, it is not gifted. It must be trained like a warrior trains his sword, daily, deliberately, and in the face of resistance. This is the battleground of discipline, the fight between the limbic system, ancient, reactive, hungry, and the prefrontal cortex, rational, future-focused, divine. The limbic cries out for what is easy, what is now. It demands pleasure without purpose, relief without reason. But the prefrontal cortex carries the weight of who you are becoming. It sees past the fog of emotion and acts on principle. It has the power to say yes when fear screams no, and to say no when temptation whispers yes. But that power is not granted, it is forged through repeated friction. Every time you resist the impulse to quit, to scroll, to retreat, You are thickening the neural connections in the prefrontal cortex. You are literally carving a path through your own biology, a path where impulse loses and identity wins. This is how the brain becomes a fortress, not by hiding from the battle, but by entering it with conviction. The more you act in alignment with your values, in defiance of comfort, the stronger that region becomes. What once felt impossible becomes instinct. What once took all your will becomes your default mode. But it only happens when the resistance is real. When you're tired, distracted, overwhelmed, and still choose discipline, that is when the brain begins to shift. That is when the divine architecture within you starts to awaken. Not when it's easy, when it's war. You must place yourself in the friction, not once, daily, because the brain, like a muscle, responds to repetition under stress. And the stress must be voluntary. You must walk into it willingly and with full awareness, knowing that your actions today are shaping your capacity tomorrow. The modern world rewards impulse. It feeds on it. But the man who masters his prefrontal cortex is immune to the noise. He sees the urgency but does not bow to it. He feels the fear but does not serve it. He has trained his brain to obey mission over mood. And in that obedience is freedom, in that obedience is fire. In that obedience is the quiet power of a mind ruled not by reaction but by resolve. There is a rhythm to the body that governs the rhythm of the mind. Before you can command focus, before you can summon clarity or drive, you must align your biology with its natural code. Sleep is not just rest, it is restoration of your neurochemical power. It is during sleep that the brain cleanses itself, stores memories, and resets the circuits of motivation. Miss it, and you miss the foundation. Disturb it, and discipline becomes a myth. But protect it, prioritize it, and you will rise with a mind sharpened by night and fueled for war by day. Then there is light, the original signal, the biological trigger that tells your brain it's time to rise. Sunlight in the morning is not optional if you seek to dominate your day. It sets your circadian rhythm, controls your cortisol pulse, and activates dopamine and norepinephrine, the very chemicals that prepare the brain for challenge, for focus, for pursuit. A few minutes of direct light upon waking can transform your physiology far more than a screen, a coffee, or any quote ever could. It is the simplest act of power and the most often ignored, and then movement, not for vanity, but for victory. The body was built to move, and when you deny it motion, you deny the brain its optimal state. Exercise floods the bloodstream with oxygen, primes the mind for focus, and enhances the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the fertilizer of growth, the catalyst for change. The act of pushing the body with intention becomes a signal to the brain that we are here to expand, not to shrink. Together, these are the unseen levers of grit, not flashy, but foundational. Sleep governs your capacity to regulate emotion. Light governs your ability to activate energy. Movement governs your ability to maintain momentum. You cannot wire your brain for success if the systems that power it are misaligned. And no amount of willpower will override a biology in chaos. You must command the body to command the mind. You must regulate the vessel to fuel the vision. This is not self-help. This is survival of the focused. It is the science of war in a world that seeks your distraction. The strong do not rely on feeling ready. They engineer readiness through deep sleep, through morning sun, through sacred movement. The ones who rise early, breathe with intention, and move with discipline, they are not lucky. They are aligned, and alignment, repeated daily, becomes dominance. There is a power hidden in adversity, but only when you choose it. The brain was not designed to grow through ease. It was designed to adapt through resistance. And when you place yourself deliberately in the presence of challenge, without being forced, without being chased, when you step into discomfort by choice, you send a signal to your nervous system, this is who I am now. That signal reshapes your circuitry. That signal rewires your identity. And what begins as a small, intentional struggle becomes the foundation for unstoppable grit. Self-directed adversity is not chaos, it is controlled fire. It's the cold shower when comfort is available. It's the final rep when the body says no. It's the phone left untouched when impulse screams yes. In these moments, you are not just building character, you are building chemistry. The brain responds to voluntary challenge with a cascade of neurochemical shifts. Dopamine rises not from pleasure, but from pursuit. Norepinephrine sharpens your vision. Serotonin reinforces the pride of discipline. Your biology begins to crave what once made you break. And here is the mystery made plain. Adversity that is chosen changes you more than adversity that is forced. When you lean into hardship because you must, you survive. But when you lean into hardship because you can, you transform. The brain marks that act as power. It encodes the memory as strength. The amygdala, once the seat of fear, becomes the seat of fire. The prefrontal cortex expands its dominance. You become not just more resilient, you become more sovereign over your mind. The world waits for life to challenge them, but those who are called to greatness challenge themselves. They do not wait for the storm, they walk into it. They do not pray for comfort, they prepare for war. And every moment of chosen struggle becomes a brick in the wall of their mental fortress. This is not performance for the world to see. This is purification in the dark, where no one claps, no one watches, and yet something eternal shifts within you. You rise because you decided to. In the language of the brain, repetition is the architect. And when that repetition is forged in fire, self-imposed, self-directed, and sacred, it leaves a deeper mark. The synapses that fire under stress grow stronger. The mind that holds its ground under pressure becomes unshakable. The soul that walks willingly into the storm begins to shine. This is the ancient path, the warrior path. The path where success is not stumbled upon, but seized through the refining flame of voluntary adversity.